So you got the former president, the first, excuse me, the former president Bolsonaro. He planned that he was sick, and he came to the United States under the pretext that he was going to seek medical help. But in reality, he was faking illness because he know he was planning a coup d'état in Brazil, and he came to seek refuge underneath Trump at Mar-a-Lago. Now he refuses to go back. He's afraid that he will be held guilty of a coup d'etat, a fascist coup d'etat on the Brazilian government. He, like Trump, before the election said that the elections will be stolen off of me. Sort of what Steve Bannon was saying about Trump. Steve Bannon was saying uh, behind the scenes when he thought he was not being recorded. When Steve Bannon thought he was not being recorded, he said, Trump is going to lose the election. But that's not going to stop him. He's going to come out and say that it was stolen off of him. And then we will crown him king of the republic. Steve Bannon was caught saying that when he didn't realize he was being recorded. In other words, the truth came out of Trump's advisors that they were plotting to steal the election regardless of the outcome. And even in the recording of Steve Bannon said, Trump is going to lose the election, but he's still going to say he won it. He got caught on tape saying that they were going to undermine and impose Trump on a coup d'etat, and he was so flagrant that he said, we will crown Trump king of the republic. That's the delusional alt-right, close to the Third Reich of fascism, under the Trump banner with his little white militias that are all priding themselves on xenophobia against Arabs, against their faiths, against the Muslim faith, against African civil rights of African Americans with xenophobia. Trump for 4 years was demagoguing African Americans in this country and calling them unpatriotic son of a bitches. He insinuated at his rallies that he will pay for his supporters to punch them, meaning black people, in their faces, that he will pay for their legal fees. He said in the old days they will be taken out of here in stretchers, insinuating the civil rights of the 1950s and 60s. And so Trump was bragging about General Lee after Nazis were marching around his statue. And Trump said there were fine people on both sides, insinuating that some of these Nazis are decent people. And so ever after that, at his rallies, he kept on bragging about General Lee and the Confederacy, along with Trump Jr. And in those same rallies, he kept on saying that black people for kneeling and praying for our winners to civil rights are unpatriotic and they're disrespecting the flag. And then Trump looks at exploited laborers of migrants that have been enslaved to the farmlands of this country and indentured in construction sites as undocumented workers. Trump refers to them and robbed them with indecencies of their human integrities and refers to them as inferiors, criminals, lowlives. He refers to them as saying, they're not sending us their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. While he points out that his white base of alt-right supporters. He doesn't recognize that these migrants are being indentured as undocumented workers, as modern-day slaves in the lands of the farmlands of this country, and the land of the construction and landscaping companies. These migrants have been indentured to build the suburban neighborhoods as undocumented construction workers, enslaved to be paid below the minimum wage without no compensation of decency. The same for the people, undocumented, that have been enslaved to work the crops in the farmlands of this country for decades, like Cesar Chavez, exploited laborers And Trump spits on their integrities and their contributions to this nation as undocumented workers that's been exploited explicitly by the rule of the Republican Party, the good old boys. Just like the plantations of slaves picking cottons, that's how they want to exploit these undocumented workers perpetually. But then Trump spits on the integrities of these these indentured servants that's been exploited for decades and decades in this country. How dare Trump consider these migrants of indecent characters, of inhumane morals, and refers to them as subhumans, criminals, lowlives, rapists, when in reality these people have the highest integrities of humanity in their hearts. But this is this fascism that Trump imposes on this republic. The same people that he panhandles to in this alt-rights. Those people that are Nazi supremacies, KKKs, that wanted to kidnap the governor of Michigan and execute her in a firing squad because of Trumpisms. That wanted to blow up Kamala Harris with 2 pipe bombs in the DNC in January 6th. That killed 5 police Capitol officers. That wanted to hang Mike Pence and kill Nancy Pelosi. That wanted to subvert 7 million votes off the popular will of the people of this nation. And there were fair audits in those swing states that Trump tried to undermine with his big lie. There were fair audits bipartisan by both parties. And every time they repeated the count, it came up to showing the truth beyond a preponderance of a doubt that Biden overwhelmingly won by 7 million votes. So now you got this Trump copycat, Bolsonaro, the Brazilian former president, faking like he wanted to come to Florida to be treated for a medical ailment. And in reality, he plotted a coup d'etat and he set it up so he can be in Florida at the time that it unfolded in Brazil. And now he's afraid of going back. He thought that this coup d'etat would impose him as a dictatorial fascist leader again. And now that he sees that it backfired and that his supporters got arrested, now he's afraid to go back and stand for what he did in the course of Brazil. Now he's seeking refuge along with Trump at Mar-a-Lago. There should be no place in democracy of this land for people of this caliber, a fascist caliber, that beyond the preponderance of the will of the people, they want to subvert themselves as autocrats of the alt-rights. With fascism that panhandles to the extreme views that alienates the majorities of the will of the peoples. Bolsonaro lost just like Trump did. But their pride for their autocratic dictatorial fascism of vanity for themselves, they coalesce together and hide from the truth. And they're so scared that they're quakering together in Mar-a-Lago. I think there should be no room in America for refuge for people that want to subvert the will of democracies. America shouldn't become a refuge of tyrant leaders that at all costs wants to impose their wills on their governments, regardless of the population and the majority that votes against them. There should be no room for fascism. They don't deny they're fascist. They embrace it. And the origins of fascism, Mussolini was the originator of that political style of governance. Mussolini came to rise in Italy, and Hitler at the time was an unknown figure in Germany's politics. He was still unknown. But when Mussolini was at the highest of his governance in Italy, Hitler used to fantasize about doing the same thing in Germany. So Mussolini spawned off fascism in Germany. Hitler emulated Mussolini. Hitler admired Mussolini. Hitler duplicated Mussolini's fascism. And you see what that led to in 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 the heart of Europe. You see what it unleashed, a world war that engulfed the most powerful regions on earth and dragged down millions of people into their destructive deaths. And at the end, Hitler recognized that the show was up when he was swallowing arsenic pills to escape prosecution while he was hiding out in his bunker. Fascism and the history of fascism should never be tolerated. Nowhere where leaders can demagogue people for their ethnicities, for their cultures, sabotage their rights to be heard by muffling the will of the populations when we represent democracy, denying us our votes. Trump and the corrupt delegates denied 3 million votes that Hillary had more than Trump for 2016 presidential race. Hillary Clinton had 3 million votes of the American people more than Trump did. But the corrupt delegates gave the victory to Trump and denied Hillary her victory. They were trying to do the same thing. They got a little bit too cocky. They said if we did it for Hillary, we could do it for Biden. We can override 7 million votes. And Trump sent Giuliani to the swing states of Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, and to undermine the inner cities, the poorest districts where Latinos and Africans live in those swing states, to subvert our population in our districts and deny us our votes. This fascism should not be tolerated. Because if we are to accept this type of fascism, we will be enslaved and subverted. Look at what fascism did for the Jewish people under Hitler. They got almost exterminated because of hatred of fascism that Hitler derived. Now, I'm not saying Trump is an anti-Semitic person, but I am saying he's a bigot against Muslims, against Africans, against Latinos, and against Asians. And his base are anti-Semitic. The people that follow him are hardcore anti-Semitic peoples. So this is the true danger of Trump's politics in America. We cannot let this repeat itself for 2024. We should extradite the corrupt Brazilian president back to his country. He should never have come to America, to Florida, under the pretext of getting medical support while he plotted to overthrow a free and fair election from Florida. And now it backfired on him. He thought he was going to win a victory and impose himself in Brazil. And now he's too afraid to go back. So now he's quakering at the feet of Trump to try to beg the Republicans to let him stay in this country. This type of governorship of fascism should never, ever even be entertained in a democratic land. We are not to become Mussolinis. We are not to become Hitlers. And we're definitely not to become Trumpocrats. What they all have in common is fascism. Now I explained that Trump is not an anti-Semitic, but he's a bigot. against Muslims, against Africans, and against migrants, Latinos. He denigrates us. He subverts us. He demonizes us. He chastises us. And he subverts our votes and suppresses the majority of people that vote against him overwhelmingly. He smothers the will of the people with his fascism. That's what Giuliani was doing at the swing states. But bipartisanly, when those audits were counted over and over and over again, it shows beyond the preponderance of a doubt that Biden won. So we can't allow drifters, con artists, swindlers to get away with cunning the societies of democratic republics. At the end of the day, fascism is void of democracy, and we cannot stand for it.